Today, we are going to tackle a huge problem for so many of us, getting out of our own way so we can finally take action. And we're going to do it by exploring a really powerful concept called ku no Sekai, or the art of decisive flow. So let me ask you this. Have you ever had a brilliant idea, maybe a project you were excited to start, or even just a decision you knew you had to make, but you just couldn't pull the trigger? You end up just spinning your wheels, thinking through every single what if, until you're totally exhausted and just stuck. If that sounds even a little bit familiar, well, you're definitely not alone. There's actually a name for this state of chronic overthinking. It's called analysis paralysis. And it's that awful feeling of being completely frozen by too much information and that endless hunt for the one single perfect choice. You know, to really get a picture of this, let's talk about someone we'll call Emily. Emily is brilliant, an amazing analyst who can research any idea into the ground and create these flawless plans. The problem? She waits for a 100% guarantee that it will work, a guarantee that, let's be honest, never actually comes. And while she's busy perfecting that research, other people who are maybe less prepared but way more willing to act, they're the ones who jump on those opportunities. So how do we break this cycle? How do we stop being Emily? Well, the answer might just come from a pretty unexpected place, an ancient idea called the warrior's empty mind. The solution lies in a Japanese concept called ku no Sekai, and that translates literally to the world of emptiness. Now, I know what you're thinking. Emptiness. Sounds kind of negative, right? But in this context, it's actually about a state of mind that's totally free from the clutter of overanalysis, free from hesitation. It's about getting into a state of pure, decisive flow. And listen, this isn't some new age self-help trend. This philosophy comes from one of the most famous swordsmen in all of history, the legendary samurai Miyamoto Musashi. For a guy like him, this wasn't just some abstract theory. It was literally a matter of life and death. Musashi put it perfectly himself. He wrote, "In combat, stopping to think results in death. You must act without the interference of excessive thinking." Think about that. For a samurai, the stakes don't get any higher. Hesitation, which is the very core of analysis paralysis, it meant failure. Action had to be intuitive, immediate, and completely free from the slow, clumsy process of conscious thoughts. Okay, so that all sounds great for a samurai warrior, but how does it help us? Well, here's the really cool part. It turns out Musashi's ancient wisdom is actually backed by modern science. So let's take a look at the neuroscience flow. I mean, we've all had those moments, right? Where you're just in the zone, time seems to melt away, and what you're doing just feels effortless. That's flow. But what's actually going on inside our brains when we hit that sweet spot? Well, to get it, it helps to think of our brain as having two different systems. You've got the analytical brain, which is run by your prefrontal cortex. This is the part that does the slow, deliberate, conscious planning. But then you have the automatic brain, your motor system. This thing processes information at incredible speeds, and it relies on your intuition and all your trained reflexes. And here's where it gets really fascinating. Scientists have discovered that during those moments of peak performance, when you're in that state of flow, the activity in your prefrontal cortex, your inner analyst, that inner Emily, it actually goes down. It gets quieter. So the takeaway here is absolutely crucial. To perform at your best, your brain literally has to get out of its own way. It has to silence that slow, critical, analytical voice to let the faster, more intuitive system take the wheel. This is the emptiness of ku no Sekai in action. All right, so we've looked at the problem and we've looked at the science behind the solution. Now let's talk about your path forward. And it all comes down to one really important mindset shift: choosing clarity over certainty. See, the trap of analysis paralysis is that it's a hunt for perfect certainty. And perfect certainty is an illusion. It just doesn't exist. You're never going to have 100% of the information. So the goal isn't certainty. The goal is purposeful clarity, just enough understanding to take the next meaningful step forward. So how do we actually get this new mindset? Well, it boils down to 3 steps. First, you have to consciously stop chasing that impossible guarantee of certainty. Second, you need to reframe how you think about mistakes. They aren't failures, they are feedback. It's just data you can use to adjust your course. And number 3, you have to trust the process. Trust in your preparation, trust your intuition, and let them guide you, instead of trying to control every single outcome from the start. Look, embracing this way of thinking isn't about being reckless. It's about being free. Free from the prison of perfectionism, free to act, free to learn, and free to finally move forward. Which really just leaves us with one last question. What will you do now that you're free to begin?